In Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, perhaps the most striking character of all is the Green Knight himself. Why? Because he is entirely green. He wears green clothes. He carries a green axe. He carries a holly bough in his hand. His horse is green. Everything about him is green. As the poet describes him, he is enker green, this wonderful word which seems to mean entirely or a very, very dark green. It's a mysterious colour, and quite deliberately so. We'll talk about this a little later on. But it's when he makes his first appearance in the poem that we see him for all his strangeness. He arrives at King Arthur's court, in the hall, on horseback, in the middle of winter, entirely green. He is an astonishing creation. So let's join him now as he enters the hall and creates the beginning of the medieval alliterative masterpiece, which is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Now will I of horse service say yow no more, for which we's may well wit no want that there were. Another noise full new nighed below, that the lewd mick to have leave liflod to catch. For uneath what's the noise not a wheel ceased, and the first course in the court kindly served. There hails in at the hall door an aglich meister, on the most on the moulder on measure hig, for the sweer to the swanger so swar and so thick, and his lindes and his lemurs so long and so great, half a tain in ed, I hope that he were, but mon most I ill got min him to been, and that the merriest in his muckle that mick to read. For a back and a breast, all were his body stern, both his womb and his waist were worthily small, and all his features falcon in form that he had full clean. For wonder of his hue man had, set in his semblant seen, he fared as freaker were fad, and over all enker green. And all graithed in green this gome and his weeders, a straight coat full strict that stick on his cedars, a merry mantle above mensked within, with pellier per the part, the pane full clean with bleath blowne full bricked, and his hod both that was lacht fro his lockers and laid on his shoulders. Hem well hailed hose of that same green, that spennet on his spaller and clean spears under a bricked gold, upon silk borders barred full rich, and shoulders under shanks there the shawl creeders. And all his vesture, verily what clean verdure, both the bars of his belt and doth the bleath stones that were richly railed in his array clean, about himself and his saddle upon silk workers, that were to tor for to tell of threefles the half, that were embroidered above with brides and fleekers, with gay gaudy of green, the gold eye amidst. The pendants of his picture, the proud croprier, his mollaines, and all the metal enamelled was then, the stirrups that he stood on, unstained of the same, and his arsoons all after, and his athel skirts, that ever glimmered and glent, all of green stones. The foal that he fek is unfin of that ilk certain, a green horse great and thick, a steed full stiff to strain, in broad and bridle quick, to the gome he wats a full gain. Well gay what's this gome geared in green, and the hair of his head of his horse sweet, fair fan and fax unbefolded his shoulders, a much beard as a busk over his breast hangers, that with his hillock hair that of his head reaches, whatsoever's all unbetown above his elbows, that half his arms thereunder were haltered in the wheeze of a kinger's capados that closes his sweer. The mane of that main horse must to hit leak, well cresped and kemmed with knotters full money, folding in with fildor about the fair green, a hair of the hair, another of gold. The tail and his topping twinning of a suit, and bounden both with a band of brickter green, dubbed with full dear stones as the doak lasted, sitting thrown with a thwang, a thwal, a knot aloft. There many bells bull bricked or brend gold rungen. Such a fold upon fold, and a freak that him readers what's never seen in that saal with sicter air that teem with ease. He looked as late so lichter, so said all that him sees. Het seemed as no man michter under his dinter's jig. Whether had he no helm, ne hauberg norther, ne no pisson, ne no plate that pented to armors, ne no shaft, ne no shield to shiver ne to smite. But in his honda he had a holland bob, that is gratis in green when grievers are bare, and an axe in his other, a hauger under meter, a spit, a snath to a spoun in spell whoso micter. The head of an Elyad, the larger length had, the grain all of green steel, and of gold hewn, the bit burnest bricked with a broad edge as well shapen to shear as sharp ressource. The steel of a stiff staff the stern hit begripped, that what's wounden with earn to the wonder's end, and all begraven with green in gracious workers. A lace lapped about that looked at the head, and so after the halm a halched full after, with 3 tassels there too tatched enough on buttons of the brickter green braid and full rich. This hathel held as him in, and the hall enters. Driven to the heydays, doth he no worth. Halst he never one but on hay he overlooked. The first word that he warp. Where is, he said, the governor of this ginga? Gladly I wold see that sega insicta with himself speak re soon. To connectors he kissed his ear, and reeled him up and down. He stemmed and con study, who walt there most renown. There what's looking on length the lude to behold. For Uchamon had marvel, quat hit mean micter that a hathel and a horse micter such a hue lack, as grow green as the grass and greener hit seemed, than green o' mail and gold glow and a brickter. All studied that there stood, and stalked him nearer, with all the wonder of the world, what he work should. For feelies sellies had they seen, but such never are, for they for phantom and fairies of folk there had deemed. Therefore, to answer what saws money apple thrika, and all stound at his Stephen and stone still setting in a swach silence through the sal reach, as all were slipped upon sleek so slick at her looters in here, I deem it not all for doubt, but some for courtesy. But let him that all should lout cast unto that way. What an amazing entrance the Green Knight makes. A startling figure. He comes into King Arthur's court. He treats all with contempt. He rides into the hall. He looks over everybody. He sees no one as higher than him. He is a challenge to King Arthur's court, and a medieval audience of this poem would have known that too. He rides with utter contempt for what the poet later describes as circuitry,
overweening pride. The Green Knight has no time for this. But what is the meaning of the green? Some people have said that the Green Knight is like the green man that we find in folklore, we find in church architectures, in bosses and on sculptures. He's a sign of rebirth, a sign of spring, a sign of renewal. Well, yes, he is, but only, I think, in a small way, but not an insignificant way. He brings about Gawain's renewal at the end of the poem. Yet there's more to this green, I think, than just about renewal and a sense of the forest. The key, I think, to understanding the greenness is this word enker, E-N-K-E-R, enker green, a sort of a very green. We might almost interpret this as evergreen. He carries in his hand a holly bough, which is brighter in green when the green wood is bare. It glows green when all around is dead. In other words, it has a supernatural power. Green is the colour of the underworld, of the devil, of something mysterious. The Green Knight, as we learn later in the poem, is the result of the magic of Morgan Le Fay. He is a creature who at the beginning of the poem and at the end disappears to where we know not. He just disappears. He exacts his revenge on Gawain in the Green Chapel, an underworld environment like none other, the most accursed church that Gawain had ever been in, because it's not a church, it's a nobot, an old cave, as the poet says. It's dank, it's dripping, it's herbage, grass, trees all around. This is a dark and forbidding place. And so the green in the poem is the green of an underworld. And I think the holly bob, the holly bough that he holds in his hand, is a key to our understanding of the symbolism of this poem. He holds an evergreen branch in the midst of winter, a sign in one way of eternal life, but in another of a life that cannot be killed by the harshest of winters. He is invincible, he's indestructible, and of course we know this because the challenge he asks of Gawain to cut off his head, provided that he can do the same in a year's time, is critical, because of course he is executed by Gawain, and then he walks abroad the hall, picks up his head and says, "I'll see you in a year, mate." And so green has an horrific connotation in this poem, quite a stark colour with dark intent. It's a wonderful symbolism. And it brings to mind my lino cut print of the Green Knight, which I produced a few years back. Here it is framed. I tried to recreate an evocation of him in the forest, and that image of course appears on the back of my translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, copies of which are currently quite hard to find, but I have good stocks here at Mythical Britain if anyone would like a signed and dedicated copy. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope I haven't frightened too many of you with the haunting symbolism of green in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.